Você ama garantir uma vaga na universidade com a sua nota do Enem? Então venha para a AMB Morumbi. Aqui você está sempre conectado com o mercado de trabalho e coloca a mão na massa desde o primeiro dia de aula. Tudo em ambientes inspiradores, com metodologia de ensino inovadora e uma estrutura de ponta. Use agora a sua nota do Enem. Inscreva-se em amb.br. AMB Morumbi. Aqui tudo acontece.
Tem um momento na carreira que precisamos dar um passo além. É hora de fazer uma pós-graduação. Só que muitas vezes o custo pesa no bolso, inviabilizando tudo. Com a pós-graduação do Senac, você não tem esse problema. Cursos com até 50% de desconto e muito mais tempo para pagar. TCC opcional, modelo flexível com aulas presenciais e online e alguns cursos com apenas 12 meses de duração. Não tem mais desculpa, hein? Saiba mais em sp.senac.br/pós-graduação.
Good afternoon, guys. Happy New Year and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you, for the audience today, Troy Ismir from Colorado. And he is a soul-centered coach. His mission is to help men embrace one's manhood, daring to take chances through their inner work that transforms lives and lives of others. I love having individuals such as Troy on the show to help inspire the audience and really welcome them. So Troy, welcome.
It's great to be here. Glad to be a part of the show.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself and talk about what you do, why you do it, and I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, my name's Troy Ismir, and I've had this calling for a number of years and finally listened to this. I left a six-figure job, I guess, going on 8 years now, and just this calling to work with men specifically. And I call it helping men get out of quiet desperation. And I think we've all experienced that to some level or extent in our lives through some level of suffering. For me, it was divorce, being in a job that wasn't fulfilling to me. And so my work is really with men. I call it soul-centered coaching for lack of I couldn't think of anything else to call it. And it's something that I think we all need somebody in our lives that will listen to us without judgment, without criticism, without condemnation. And I don't think too many men have that in their lives. I certainly didn't. I'm fortunate to have somebody in my life now that knows everything about me and they accept me for who I am. So that's really the work that I'm doing right now.
Interesting. And I always love the use of words and the power of words. And so you say men are living lives of quiet desperation. Talk about this epidemic that a lot of people don't realize is happening.
Yeah, I borrowed that from Henry David Thoreau. So I'm going to not take credit for it. He's a lot more artistic and creative than I am, but it's men aren't living a life that makes them fully alive, right? We're not living our passions, our dreams. We might be very successful making a lot of money, which I was in the pharmaceutical sales industry, nothing wrong with that industry. It just wasn't for me. I did it for 17 years, so a long time. And I got really good at it. I was very successful. I won national sales awards and all that. And so I was successful, but I felt like I was in quiet desperation. And then on top of that, I was in a marriage that was not very healthy, and I'll just leave it at that. I got married very young and just wasn't the right fit. So I was in quiet desperation. I looked like I had it all together. Like I would go to work. Me and my wife would go to tennis tournaments where my kids would play, and we were known as Ken and Barbie. So from the outside looking in, we had it all together. In the inside, I was chaos. I was anger. I was rage, all those emotions. And I honestly was feeling pretty hopeless at that point. I never thought of suicide. That never entered into my mind, but I know the men I work with, and you can see it every day in the news, that these men that look highly successful are committing suicide. And that just breaks my heart because they have so much to offer. So it's these highly successful men that are in quiet desperation and they don't know what to do. And oftentimes they take themselves out through either alcohol, pornography, or just making some really bad choices in their lives.
Mhm. Yeah, sounds I know that's not this story is not no stranger. And once you identify that, some people are unconsciously aware and some are consciously aware and some are not even aware. So how do you go from a lost soul to a courageous soul?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not easy because of all those things that you said, right? Oftentimes it comes to the point where we'll say we have to hit bottom, right? You hear alcoholics talk about I hit rock bottom. Unfortunately, that's a lot of times through deep suffering is where we start to have that, we'll call it awakening or conscious awareness that this isn't working. So we have to overturn what isn't working in our life. And that takes a lot of courage. One of my clients says, man, it takes a lot of bravery to go on this path. It's a healing path and a spiritual path. They're both one and the same. So I think it's, for most of us, it's hitting rock bottom. Like for me, it was my divorce. Like I dropped down to my knees one day and I said, I can't do this anymore. So here I am 15 years later after the divorce, going through all of that healing. It takes a lot of courage to reach out for help. Men, quite honestly, suck at it, right? We're not very good at vulnerability. I call it courageous vulnerability. So one of the things that I've been called to do is set up very small, intimate groups of 5 that we share vulnerably that the struggles and also the victories, knowing, and really it's about not trying to fix anybody or solve anybody's problems. It's about knowing we're not alone. Like how I'm struggling in my life right now may be different from how this guy is, but underneath it, it's all the same. So we come together once a month and then connect in between. So just having this outlet, but it takes the man to have the courage to reach out and say, I need some help. Not that I need to be fixed, that I'm broken. I think that's a message that gets misconstrued. We make poor choices, but we're not broken. We just need to realize more of the truth of who we are. So it's a journey. And that I think it's a lifetime to go from quiet desperation to this fully realized man of courageous soul. But we evolve over time. And for me, what's so gratifying about this work is to see men who were in quiet desperation, were struggling in their marriage, were in a job that they couldn't stand, to get out of that and start to live life to the full. And that's why I do the work that I do.
Because I resonate with you, and a lot of the things, for example, you've got this picture perfect life, but inside and then we talk about going from lost soul to courageous soul, and you talk about hitting rock bottom. And then just to prepare the audience, those that are gonna make this leap, talk about, because it's a double hit, because like when you take the leap from a high 6-7 figure job and then you're on your own now, and then you have your loved ones or colleagues just saying you're crazy, and then when you make that transition, it's not often an easy transition. Sometimes you end up worse than where you were. So prepare those, and how do you address those?
Again, it's not easy. I have a poster hanging up. It says, growth starts where comfort ends. That's hanging in my living room. So I need to remind myself every single day that growth starts where comfort ends. And a big part of the theme of my work personally is to take a chance on myself and asking those hard questions. Am I fulfilled? Am I living a life of passion? And then taking that leap of faith. Like I took a big leap of faith. You can take small leaps of faith. I chose to quit my job and move to a different state. It took me time. It took some courage to build up. And I didn't do it just without planning. I had some money saved up. I still had some wisdom behind it. But life's too short to settle for less than what we're here to realize for ourselves and to help other people realize too. So as I expand in who I am, and the more I can help other people do the same. So it starts with me to be able to do that. And I don't care if it's one small change you make in your life. Maybe it's starting to get healthy. So you start to eat 2 or 3 servings of vegetables instead of none. It might be that. Or you quit your job, you move to another state and you become an entrepreneur and you don't know. I didn't know. And we want to know, right? We want safety and security. And that's what self-preservation is, what holds us back. What if I don't make enough money? What if I end up on the street homeless? So I'm 8 years into this journey and I am more fulfilled and more free than I have ever been in my life. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. But that's what's been the beautiful part of it. I've fallen down many times and it's evolved so much as I've evolved. So it's really a journey of personal spiritual growth. And that just shows up in the work that I'm doing with men. And it's challenging, but it's also fun. It's really rewarding. Like how many of your listeners are very successful, but unfulfilled? I don't know. I hope you're successful and fulfilled because there's no reason why you can't be really fulfilled in what you do and make a lot of money. I don't believe they're mutually exclusive. But if you're making a lot of money and you're like miserable, then you really have to do some soul searching and what's holding you back from taking a chance. And it's usually fear of the unknown.
I was listening to one podcast on YouTube, and basically he was saying, because he knew his audience so well, and basically if you're listening to that podcast, and for a lot of the audience listening to this, it's almost I wouldn't say near impossible, but if you're listening to this, it can't be that bad. It's just your preconceived fears and notions, because a lot of people listening, they're very highly successful. Likelihood of being homeless is really low. It's just that we just put these fears blinders on.
We get caught up in our material world, right? And we need stuff. And I chose to be a very minimalist lifestyle, which makes it a lot easier. Like I said, I've been divorced for coming on 15 years. I'm still single. And the minimalist lifestyle works for me. And I traveled for 3 years. I sold everything, and everything I owned fit in the back of my Subaru Outback and just traveled domestically. Once COVID hit, that's when I started working virtually and settled back in Colorado after traveling in Florida and New Mexico. It's just been fun. It's been an adventure, and why not?
Yeah, I love that. You also mentioned earlier on that most people settle, and define what settling is and why do people settle?
Yeah, I think it's complacency, maybe a little bit like, hey, I have a good life, right? I could have stayed in pharmaceutical sales and been happy. It would have been fine, making a lot of money, 401k, company car, all that stuff. So, hey, from the outside looking in, but I know in my heart that I would have settled. I wasn't fulfilling my purpose. And at that time, my purpose really was to be present for my kids as much as possible. And once my kids graduated high school, I knew I lost my why. So if I would have stayed in pharmaceuticals, I would have settled for making a lot of money. But yeah, it's complacency. It's fear of the unknown, really. And the number one thing is self-preservation. I have to preserve this self. So we think of money as food on the table, clothes, shelter, all that stuff. And somehow, some way, I have food on the table. I have clothes on my back. And I live in a great home. And like literally, Chris, where I live, sitting on my chair, I can look out and see Pikes Peak, right, in Colorado. So I'm like 30 minutes from Colorado Springs. And I love like Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, I don't have a TV. So I have a big, huge sliding glass door. And Thich Nhat Hanh says that was his television. And I feel the same way. And he was called to a very simple life. So another saying I have is smile, breathe, and go slowly. And I think we get caught up in the busyness of life.
Yeah.
So I would challenge myself and your listeners to smile, just breathe, and maybe just slow down a little bit. Just take a few minutes just to sit. And maybe you look outside, whatever the nature is for you, and you get still within. And I think that's one of the lost arts we'll say, humanity, is just to find this inner stillness. When we have a few moments in the grocery store line, we don't grab our phone. We just take some deep breaths and we connect to our inner being. And that helps us to go beyond just settling for the status quo. And most people, I included for many years, was just, let's go along with what everybody else is doing, what everybody else says what success is.
Você ama ter mais flexibilidade para estudar? Então, use sua nota do Enem e garanta uma vaga na AMB Morumbi. Aqui, você pode escolher qual modalidade se adapta melhor à sua rotina. Presencial, semipresencial ou ensino à distância. Tudo com metodologia inovadora e prática desde o início do curso. Descubra por que milhares de alunos amam estudar aqui. Use agora a sua nota do Enem e inscreva-se em amb.br. AMB Morumbi. Aqui, tudo acontece.
The other thing that what came up to my mind during your response is that, for example, how do you define what you did? Very courageous and taking a leap of faith, betting on yourself and seeing what the universe has. And then how do you compare and contrast it with what people call self-sabotage, the fear of success and fearing success and self-sabotage? Because some people would look at it that way. How would you address that?
Yeah, I think it's whenever we're pursuing our passion and our calling, I don't think we can go wrong, even when we fail, right? Even if this was a failure, right? Even if I did go bankrupt and lost everything, would it be a failure? No, because I had to go out on my own and see what was possible. And like I said, here I am 8 years later, and maybe next year I'm back in the corporate world. I won't be, but it's still a possibility. I kind of joke I'm probably unemployable at this point in my life. But yeah, I think self-sabotage is usually either you get too successful, I don't deserve this, or you are so scared and afraid to go out on your own that you don't believe in yourself. And I remember when I told my colleagues that I was leaving the pharmaceutical industry, which not many people do. A lot of them said, I wish I could do that. And my thought was, you can if you want to. And I think a lot of them are still in pharmaceutical sales, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's everybody, I do believe everybody has their own path to take. And I think there's no wrong path. It's whatever path we're called to be on in this lifetime. And for me, I was called to go on this path. And not making anybody wrong for not choosing what maybe their heart desires. Maybe they're not ready for it, and that's okay. There's no shame in where anybody's at. So yes, fear of success, fear of failure. I think the only way we can really fail is to not live life fully alive. And we can only choose that for ourselves.
Yeah, I really love that. The next question I have for you is, because what I really love is about redefining the concept of masculinity, and you talked about vulnerability, but if you turn on the TV, you've got the NFL and NBA and just this macho, or you got to be strong. And talk about this culture of masculinity portrayed by the.
It's been really interesting to go on this journey of this understanding of masculinity because of, again, how the media portrays and social media and what the expectations are. And I played football in college. And if you want to talk about, that machismo and the expectations of how to be, and I had to be somebody that I really wasn't. I love football, but it just kept getting more violent and violent. So like the strategy was lost more in the violence. And I remember one of my coach getting in my face is just, what's wrong with you? Why can't you be more aggressive? And then I found that within myself. So I knew it was this inner rage was in me. And it's almost like I had to cultivate that in me, but I knew there was something missing. And I was very successful in football. And I love football, the strategy, but I don't love the violence so much anymore. So it's really what I'm learning on this journey is to uncover parts of me that I didn't know that have been suppressed for many years. So for example, I've discovered the art and practice of Qigong, which is inner martial arts, which is a beautiful expression that I don't have to be aggressive or hurt myself in the gym or go on these huge long bike rides. It's just a simple expression of energy. It's the skill of working with energy. And I can express myself that way. It's just more of a creative art. It's a dance and it's very beautiful. And it's just, oh, that was a lost part of me. And oftentimes I would feel shame or not feel comfortable expressing that. So I think it's part of this suppressed part of ourselves that we'll call it the divine feminine. The more the going slow and the artistic, creative side of ourselves, can we go and find that lost part, whether it's maybe through expression through art or writing or dance, whatever that is, maybe just turning inward. And the world portrays what masculinity is supposed to be, and it's not working. It's not working at all, as we see more violence, more trying to get power over people. And I think that hopefully the healthy masculinity is finding the power within ourselves. And then we know who we are, and we don't have to have power over people anymore. We can just show up in a way that's loving and kind and compassionate to ourselves and to the world around us. So I really think and hope that we're leading a way that it's more about inner power. And honestly, that toxic masculinity is really coming from a place of feeling powerless inside. So we have to have power over people. And that's where we get into trouble.
Yeah, I love that. What a way to end the pod. And I really enjoyed talking with you. And how can people find you? And if men need coaching or counseling or help, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best way is to go to my website. I'm actually on all social media right now. Take a little break. So my website is innerpowercollective.com, and my email is on there. Send an email to troy@innerpowercollective.com. And I offer a 2-hour free complimentary, let's do a deep dive and see if this work is for you. And if it is, great. If not, I know it's not for everybody because it's intense. And it takes a lot of courage, and it will transform every area of your life if you're ready for it, and you got to be ready for it. So I welcome anybody that's struggling in quiet desperation to have the courage just to reach out without any obligation.
Yeah, I really love that. Keep up the great work and to your continued success in 2025.
Thank you. And I honor you and your work that you're doing and the message that you're bringing to the world. Thank you, Chris.